Hello and welcome to this video. This video is about setups where black plays the moves d5 and bishop to g4. Often, in the majority of cases, black will also combine this with c6 and e6 and build up this triangle pawn center. This setup is often employed by players who regularly play the Slav defense. So if they have this in their repertoire, they will often go for a setup like this. It's somewhat related to the bishop f5 setups that we examined in a separate chapter. Now, before we go into in detail, I want to show you what our standard moves are, because we have a basically predefined move order that we are going to play basically every time, unless black does something extraordinary, like taking on c4 where we need to react, or play some odd move order that we can exploit. So what I call the main line in this chapter is the following. So we go knight f3, and now black will play bishop g4, of course, but the order is a little bit can be a little bit different. They can play it here, which is questionable, or they can prepare it with knight f6 and c6. And this is going to be probably the most frequently seen order of moves. So we play bishop g2, they play bishop g4, and now an important moment for the move order, similarly to the bishop f5 chapter, where we would have almost the same position, but the bishop here. Similar to this chapter, I recommend to start with the move c4 here instead of castling. So I suggest to play c4 here. Black will most of the time play e6, and then you should play the move h3. This is what I ultimately came up with after studying various other move order options. One incentive to play it like this is the simplicity and the somewhat similarity to the bishop f5 approach. In the bishop f5 lines, we also play c4 before castling. One reason why this is also a good idea here is that after h3, black might decide to put it back to f5. I know this doesn't sound ultra logical, but we will see that putting it on h5 does have its problems as well. So in such a scenario, we would basically play knight c3, and we would have the bishop f5 chapter with white having an extra move h3, which does not hurt at all. Quite the opposite. So this kind of move order is going to be what we are doing usually. We play c4 before castling and then h3. The absolute main position of this chapter is here, when black has a choice between playing knight bd7 and bishop e7. They could transpose into one another, but this is basically what the main line looks like. We have to first, before we get to the main line, sort out some other move order ideas. Mostly, this is related to black not playing knight f6 early on, but delaying this move. It's not a huge issue. We basically play in the same fashion as we do in the main line, and often it will transpose, but it's useful to check, of course. So we play knight f3, and here the soundest way to go for bishop g4 setup is to play either c6 now or knight f6. The immediate move bishop g4 is not a good choice, because we can exploit that immediately by going knight to e5. I need to emphasize that you can play g3, but it doesn't make all that much sense in comparison to knight e5. It's all good to have a standard set of moves that you can play, but if they play bad moves, we should exploit that. Knight e5 is just a very useful tempo on the bishop. Now the bishop has to move again, and after bishop h5, we can immediately go for a punishment by playing g4 and h4. This is not some loose expansion. This is just a good way of playing. We are simply trying to trap the bishop with h5. Black is in some trouble here. The relatively best for him at this point would be e6. And now we should play bishop g2. The reason is that the immediate h5 after bishop e4, f3, f6 is not as convincing. This is not bad, but I think bishop g2 is a little bit better. Black really doesn't have a way to solve this issue on the king side, with h5 still being a threat. and after bishop d6, h5, bishop e4, f3, we have a huge advantage. The only way for black to not lose the full bishop now is f6, after which we now get to the only moment where you need to know something in this line, or should remember something to be a lot better, and that is the move knight to f7. It's quite funny. Yeah, we just jump right in and just basically force the black king to move so that it is on a less safe position. So black will take, we take on e4, and after d takes, bishop takes, we have a huge advantage. Yeah, black can play bishop g3, but this is just not going to do all that much. We play king f1, and we have all the moves coming for us now with tempo. Queen d3, for example, would attack here and here. And on top of that, of course, b7 is currently attacked. Yeah, this is a great position for white. Also, king on g2 will be safe. That is a really bad line. Somewhat better in comparison after knight e5 is bishop f5. This is also better for white, but not as much as bishop h5. So we play c4, unsurprisingly, putting more pressure on the center. And now black will probably play f6 and drive the knight back. It's just such a annoying piece. Yeah. So f6, we go back. They will probably play e6 here, knight c3, c6. That is, I think, relatively best what black can do. And now I just recommend to play g3, which is according to our usual way of playing in a bishop f5 setup in all of our setups. And here black has the really dreadful move f6 in, which is, of course, not helping at all. You could, in fact, get this position with a pawn on f7 if you put moves on the board starting d4, d5, knight f3, bishop f5. So this is a full extra tempo, but it's just a bad one. And we have a very straightforward plan here. What we should do here is play bishop g2, castle, and then go for e4, maybe prepared by knight d2 and rook e1, moves like that. If we get e4 in, we will expose the weakness here of the e6 pawn and the whole black position in general. So this, all in all, renders bishop g4 as close to a mistake. It's not a good move. It is a lot better in comparison for black to play knight f6 or c6. We should start with c6. I have to mention that this move is not met all that frequently, in fact, because many players who play the Slav would rather play knight f6 first to be more flexible for sidelines. For example, here after c6, black also has to be ready for bishop f4, which is a London system with black already committed to c6. That is not everybody's cup of tea. Most people against the London wouldn't play c6 voluntarily. This is, by the way, not a bad alternative, in particular here, as black, as mentioned, is committed to c6. So if you just want to play something else, this is not a bad spot to do that. Now, we go g3, yeah, and this, of course, has no drawback whatsoever. I just want to mention that c6 is not going to happen all that frequently because of move order problems for black times. Okay, so g3, bishop g4, yeah, they can play knight f6, but that we will look at via knight f6 on move 2. So bishop g4, bishop g2, and knight d7. This would be the way to somehow make use of omitting knight f6, so to prioritize development of the queen side. One point of this way of developing can be that black is a bit quicker with controlling the e5 square, so that there's no knight e5 coming. That's not really what we would do against knight f6, but still, that could be a motivation. Instead of knight d7, they can also play e6 first, but they will play knight d7 or knight f6 soon, and that is also just a transposition. So, as mentioned, we will play c4 before castling. So c4 here is what we should do. And what we always have to check is what happens after the capture on c4. In my experience, that doesn't happen that often. Black oftentimes just wants the pawn triangle and be solid. They don't want to grab material. But we have to know, of course, what would happen. So if black takes, I suggest a standard procedure to handle that. And we should play always knight d2 first. So after knight d2, we are pretty much sure that we get the pawn back. So after knight b6,